When you go to a doctor, you expect to get the best care and receive the right diagnosis. Unfortunately, that isn't always the case. Medical errors can lead to everything from denial of insurance coverage to even death. So how do you know if you're getting the right care? Well, the new book, The Empowered Patient, is a roadmap to getting the best treatment, finding the right doctor, and fighting back when you think you're not being cared for properly. Joining us now is the author, Elizabeth Cohen, who is also CNN's Senior Medical Correspondent. Elizabeth, thank you for joining us.
Oh, thank you.
So right off the bat in the book, you talk about how you had to become an empowered patient with the birth of your third daughter. Tell us a little bit about that.
That's right. She was born full-term, happy baby, but when she was 2 days old, she had seizures. And she went to the neonatal intensive care unit, and she had to have spinal taps, which is what happens when a child has seizures.
Right.
But the doctor said, all right, we've done a few of them. She's fine. We don't need to do any more. But then when I went to go visit her in the NICU, they had just given her another one, despite the fact that the doctor had said no more.
Right.
And they were about to give her yet another one.
Oh.
And I really had to fight and get a nurse to help me to convince them not to do it. It was 6 in the morning, the doctor wasn't there.
You were hysterical.
Yeah, absolutely. I was completely hysterical. So actually, I wasn't as empowered as I would be now. This was,
Right.
many years ago. I actually was hysterical crying. And it was a nurse who came up to me and she calmed me down and she said, what's going on? And once I explained it to her, she said, oh, we're not going to let that happen. And she fixed it. So she is my guardian angel
Yes.
forever. She's an amazing nurse.
Absolutely.
But that's what happens sometimes.
So the baby did not have to go through that, and they were telling you no, there was some type of error that happened. I mean, doctors are not infallible.
Right, I think there was a miscommunication. The doctor said no more spinal taps. I'm going to tell the nurses and the doctors no more spinal taps, and yet one was done on her unnecessarily. Hospitals are big, crazy, busy places. Communication lapses happen, and it happened with her when she was, just a little tiny newborn.
Yeah, and you walked in there and you were expecting, they told you we're not going to do any more spinal taps. When you see your baby in the morning, she's going to be lively, and you walked in and she was a rag doll still.
Right,
and lined up for another one.
Right, because they had kept her on these huge doses of drugs that had made her very sedate, and they said no more spinal taps and we'll cut back on those drugs, so she'll be much more lively. And she wasn't. She was the same rag doll. And I said, what happened? And they said, we didn't receive any orders to cut back on those drugs.
Right, miscommunication. Okay,
Right.
So now you need to be a bad patient. There's a difference between being a good patient and a bad patient. Explain that.
Right, when I say a bad, I always go like this, a bad
patient, a bad girl.
A bad girl, right, exactly. And I think it's important that you said the word girl there, because I think women have a tough time with this.
Yeah.
Sometimes you have to be bad. You have to make a fuss, and people will get mad at you. The doctor might get annoyed at you. The nurse might roll her eyes at you, but you have to get the care that you deserve, and you have to get the right care. And if it makes people unhappy, so be it. I mean, you need to do what you need to do. And you do it as politely as possible, but sometimes you do have to be bad, and I think a lot of us have a hard time with that. We want to be liked.
Right, we do want to be liked. And you talk about at work, people will come up to you and they'll kind of spill their guts to you about their health concerns and health problems. Why are people afraid to be honest with their doctors?
Well, I think part of it, in the book I tell the story of people coming up to me in the hallways at work telling me, what should I do? Should should my mother get this kind of chemotherapy or that kind of chemotherapy? I'm not a medical doctor, so why are they asking me? I think one of the reasons they're asking me is, one, sometimes they're too intimidated to ask their doctor question after question. And I think the other reason is that we don't have enough time with our doctors. We often have just minutes.
Couple minutes, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And most doctors, I think these days, still don't do email. So you leave that appointment and you think, oh, I forgot to ask whatever. And that's a huge, huge problem. And that's why you have to go into every doctor's appointment with a game plan.
Right.
Because you may have 10 minutes.
Yeah, and you talk about how to get the doctor's email, the importance of just asking for it or finding it. But how do you avoid being misdiagnosed?
Well, there are lots of red flags that you've been misdiagnosed. And in the book, I talked to many people who were misdiagnosed. And most of them had sort of this gut feeling that something was wrong. I talked to a woman named Trisha Torrey who had a lump in her side. And they said it was cancer. And they said, you need chemo now or you're going to be dead in 4 months.
Oh my
and
gosh.
she said, I feel fine. She said, I feel fine. And she looked up the symptoms of the cancer she'd been diagnosed with, which was a terrible kind of lymphoma. She said, I don't feel any of these symptoms. I feel fine. And she didn't have cancer. And they were about to start chemo, and she didn't have cancer. And she figured it out on her own because she had a gut feeling that something wasn't right. It's like your gut combined with the internet. Those two things can really go well together.
And I love in your book, you say, when they give you the diagnosis, you can also ask, what else could it be? Don't just take one answer for anything. What do you hope the main thing that people will get out of your book?
I think what I hope the main message that people will get is that you will need to advocate for yourself and for your family for your health care, that the Dr. Marcus Welby days where everyone just walked in and had the perfect doctor who had plenty of time to spend with them, those days unfortunately are over. I love doctors. Doctors have saved my life, my children's life. I mean, I love them, but they're working under very difficult circumstances and they're only human. And so you have to be smart. So I hope that's the message people get, is that you have to advocate for yourself and you have to advocate for your loved ones.
Elizabeth Cohen, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, Emily.
Again, the book is The Empowered Patient, and it's available now.